Tonight, again, we're going to be in 1 Samuel 28, and the topic on our lesson is the rise of the king. Saul goes deeper into sin. And as we've been studying about Saul, the first king of Israel, and things that have been going on between him and David, who Samuel had anointed to be king of Israel, yet Saul was still serving in that capacity. So, does anybody know where we stopped at last time? I think it was around verse 8 or 9, but the pastor has the lesson printed out, started at 5, so I'm going to read 5, 6, and 7. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams, or by Urim, or by the prophet. Then Saul said to his servant, "Find me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her." And his servant said to him, "In fact, there is a woman who is a medium at Endor." So I think that's where we finished up the last time, talking about Saul going to the medium to try to get her to conduct a seance or something to bring Samuel back. And so would someone read verse 8 and we'll get into our lesson tonight.
So Saul disguised himself and put on other clothes, and he went and 2 men with him. And they came to the woman by night, and he said, "Please conduct a seance for me, and bring up for me the one I shall name to you."
So Saul has disguised himself. Thank you, Sister Linda. Saul has disguised himself, and he's got 2 men with him, and he's going to see this lady who is a spiritualist to conduct a seance. What's a seance? Anybody? What kind of devil work?
It's when they try to bring the dead, bring the spirits back, bring the dead back. Try to bring the spirits back.
So Saul's not praying to the Lord at this point. He's wanting this lady to bring Samuel back by some means that are not godly. So when we start doing things like that, we know we're getting in trouble, don't we?
Well, it's kind of like when you go see those palm readers, you know. It's not a problem.
So Saul has really drifted. We know he's been drifting from the Lord by some of the things he's been doing and some of the things he's been saying. But this really shows that he's got way out there. He's got getting further and further away from the Lord. He's what we call getting out there on a limb. And Pastor, there's some commentary down here. It says, according to this scripture, what can be a sign that you are sinning? Anybody got an answer? According to the scriptures, what can be a sign that you are sinning? That last verse that we read?
They came to the woman by night.
Came to the woman by night? Okay, Sister Lynn?
He wanted to take people with him. And I think we got to this one last Monday, but I feel like, misery loves company. So if I'm going down, somebody's going to go down with me. I'm not going by myself.
Right. I think I remember you saying that the last time too.
And he disguised himself.
And disguised himself. Yeah. So when you got to disguise yourself, you're not doing right. You're not being truthful. Yeah. You're kind of doing shady, something kind of shady, something that's not right.
That was kind of like in the Old Testament, Eric she wouldn't want that.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just like people that rob banks and stores and things of that sort. They make themselves up not to be noticed.
Who they are.
Disguise.
Disguise themselves.
And they disguise themselves. They put on, masks and hoods and all. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Knowing that they're going to.
Knowing that they're going to. Yeah. Okay, somebody read verse 9 so we can get further into the lesson here.
Then the woman said to him, "Look, you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the spiritists from the land. Why then do you lay a snare for my life to cause me to die?"
So she's scared, isn't she?
obedient and she's scared.
She's a
But don't you think rightfully so, because he has kind of issued an edict that we're gonna kill all of the, spiritualists, people like her in the land. I mean, so,
She was like down to her.
she thinks, she don't know whether she's being tricked or not. She knows that the mediums have been killed or run out from the land, and evidently she's got a nice place she's been hiding. She's got a place that she's, pretty secure in and comfortable in. But she knows at the same time, she could be putting her life on the line.
And she's playing like she's gonna stop when they eat it there. She hasn't. She said that she wanna do, would do it. But she's knowing that she's been hiding. She's just like Saul, always from the
Do
yeah.
So do we, we that are Christians, do we believe that people can do this stuff? Do we believe that people can conduct a seance and have a tie-in to the spirits, to people that have died? I mean, as Christians, do we believe
The
that?
enemy is able to do a lot. God allows him to do. So it's the work of the enemy, and he does a lot out here nowadays. And back then too. So.
And if you look in Galatians 5, you'll see in there the listing of the things that you're not in the kingdom that you do, and one of them is witchcraft.
Yeah.
And those that now, if a person is doing that, the thing for, if you think it's against you or whatever, you just don't receive it and accept it.
Yeah.
Because you know God has got the power over anything that they do, and people will do that, but they will not enter the kingdom. And I don't believe that they can take over the Holy Spirit out of us and do what they want to unless we allow that.
Right.
Unless we allow that to happen. So we have to be strong and because I've heard people say that, and I've heard them say about going to see somebody paid all their money. I said, well, what did you get accomplished? Well, they said they were gonna take care of it, they gave me some stuff and everything. But you know what? It cost $800. I said, you know what they did? I said, let me tell you, I wasn't there, but I'll tell you what they did. They asked you some questions, and you answered, and they just went back over and gave you some solid things to talk about. I said, yeah, you see the question, okay? What happened? The person that it was their son was in a lot of trouble. And they told him that he would be out in a few months. He made 21 years.
Wow.
So you see, that foolishness,
Yeah.
just throwing away money and sin.
Yeah, we know that once, it says that, Jesus, if we're in his hand, no one can pluck us out. But if you're not, we know that Satan, from, what the magicians did at Pharaoh and turning the rod into snakes, and, Jesus Satan carried Jesus up on a high mountain and up in the holy city. Satan has power to do things, and he can do counterfeit miracles and stuff. So people that sell out to him, choose to work through him, Sister Barbara.
And I think we as Christians, when our loved ones die, we know that they're going to a better place. And if they are believers,
Yes, right.
we know they're going to a better place. Why would we try to contact them?
Right.
That's for those that don't believe
Right.
and are constantly or have some unresolved, as people say, feelings,
Yeah.
that they feel like they can resolve those feelings by trying to pay somebody to contact that person for them, that's really trying to rip them off. But I believe that if you are firmly planted in Christ, and you know that your family member was firmly planted, you're not gonna try to contact them. That's like me going out here sitting there talking to my mom's not there. I know she's not there. And I've had to explain that to family members. I said, it's lonely out there now, and whatever you bury her. But we have to believe, we believe she's gonna go to heaven. And I feel, it's like I feel her presence with me at certain times. But I don't see me trying to get anybody to summon her spirit to come back here, because I know what she was dealing with in those last days. I wouldn't want her to do that.
We want to go where he is rather than bring her back to where we are. But someone read our next verse so we can get a little further in our lesson.
Saul,
Yeah.
the Lord will, your presence shall come upon you for this family.
Okay, so Saul is trying to calm her mind, he's trying to calm her and let her know, let's go ahead and do this, and if you do it, no harm is gonna come to you. You know, he's swearing by the Lord that, you know, no punishment or no harm is gonna come to her. So our commentary down here says, was it proper for Saul to swear this by the Lord? Was this proper for Saul? Yeah, yeah. That's right. Okay, someone read verse 11 then.
Then the woman said, whom shall I bring up for you? And he said, bring up Samuel for me.
So the woman wants to know who he wants to bring up. And he said, bring up Samuel. So that's kind of ringing a bell for the lady, I think. Bring up Samuel. Everybody in the land knew Samuel. And they knew he was a great prophet. And they knew he was a godly prophet. So most people in the land had respect for Samuel. She's probably thinking, why does she want to bring Samuel up? At this point, does she know that this is Saul she's talking to?
No.
No, that doesn't seem so. Will someone read verse 12?
When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman spoke to Saul, saying, why have you deceived me? For you are Saul. So this lady, she's conducting a seance, and it seems that she's looking down in something and she's seeing Samuel, right? So it seems like it kind of frightened her a little bit, didn't it? And she's asking Saul why he deceived her. So at this point she said that for you are Saul. So
I think it's making her a little really confident. Thought he was something that he was really not. And she gets your hopes up, and then even somebody do hard things like this, like disguise themselves up there, and see that they're not being truthful. But this is kind of like, you know, you not want to say one thing, you really know that you disguise what it says, you know. When we're speaking, we're admitting in Christian life, and people see our life.
yeah. Yeah, so do you think, is she starting to worry about her life at this point? Do you think she's, you know, because hadn't Saul said that he wanted all the Medians killed or ran out of the land? So do you think for just a minute she's thinking that she might be in trouble?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody read the commentary.
Commentators are disagreed as to what actually happened next. Some feel that an evil spirit impersonated Samuel. I'm on the wrong one?
No, you're on the right one.
Okay.
You're on the right one.
Okay. While others believe that God interpreted the seance unexpectedly by allowing the real Samuel to appear. The latter is preferred for the following reasons. The medium was startled by the sudden appearance of Samuel in place of the familiar spirits with whom she was used. Dealing. Also, the text specifies that it was Samuel. Finally, the Spirit prophesied accurately what would happen the following day.
Thank you, Richard. So what do we believe? Do we believe this was Samuel, or do we believe it was a spirit from Satan or something? So what do we believe? Samuel? Everybody believe it was Samuel? Does anyone believe it was a satanic spirit or something, or does everyone believe it was Samuel? Tabitha?
I think it's good to know that even with darkness and things that we see as evil, that God can use them even for for his own purposes. And so oftentimes we think that the devil has, when we're in his lair or whatever, that God doesn't have any control over that. But God has control over everything. He can use whatever he wants to.
Absolutely. That's right. Anybody else have any comments on that?
I don't know why, but I think it was Samuel. I don't know why, but I've been wrong once in my life, but.
We're gonna go a little further. We're gonna kind of find out whether we think it was Samuel or not. Somebody read verse 13.
And the king said to her, "Do not be afraid. What did you see?" And the woman said to Saul, "I saw a spirit ascending out of you."
So it looks like, it looks like this seance may be, it may be going on. It looks like this medium may, she may have something going on. She might be involved in some witchcraft here. She's able to do some things that ordinary people can't do.
Well, I think God allowed that to happen for a purpose, like Pastor said, and his son, she saw it because, and put it out there because he allowed it to happen for a purpose.
Yeah, I think so. I think sometimes, when we really want something, I think God allows us to get it. He allows us to get what we think we want when we really don't. It seems that, Saul wanted to talk to Samuel, but, I don't think it was really what he wanted. He went to this medium, and, he could have prayed to God. He could have prayed to God. That's what he was, if he was a godly king, that's what he would have did. He wouldn't have been going around seeking these, going after this witchcraft. He's the king, he's the king of Israel. He's supposed to be a holy nation after God. And here he is, he's following after witchcraft. He did the right thing by getting rid of the Indians and whatnot, but now, here he is going by night, dressed up and, and covered up, hiding himself and, sneaking around and, doing stuff that's just not holy. So it's hard to imagine him, going after God, doing things like this.
Back in the very beginning of the Bible study, it says in verse 6, it says, when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him either by dreams or by Urim or by the prophets. And so that goes to show that, to me, that sometimes when we pray, God says wait, and he's not waiting. And so he tries to turn to something else. And when he tried, and him being a godly man, he should have waited on the Lord, but he was impatient, and he wanted an answer. And sometimes God doesn't always answer you. And so then and it is my belief that when he said he saw Samuel, that God was just trying to really kind of teach him a lesson, that I can do anything.
Yeah.
And so you need to wait on me and wait till you hear what I'm going to say. And even sometimes when you go into battle, because sometimes you go into battle, period, in different things in your life, you don't know how the outcome is. You've prayed about it, but you don't know how the outcome. But the minute you go into it, you can see the outcome. You can see what's going to happen. You can see that all the enemy's defense is completely around you, and that everything is all the chains are broken, and the outcome is going to be for your good.
Yeah. And I think Sister Catherine is on the edge of something here. Saul was, as we've been reading and studying, and as pastors been, in this book of Samuel for a while, it seems like Saul has been out of the will of God. He's been out of the will of God, and God hasn't answered him, and that very possibly could be because he is out of the will of God. And if he could get back in the will of God, God might answer him, but he's out of the will of God. And he's praying to God. He's sought advice from God. I'm not going to say praying to God, but he's sought advice from God, and God just, I don't hear,
Right.
You know, and that's the way it is with us sometimes, isn't it? If we're out of the will of God and know we're out of the will of God, do we expect God to answer us? Should we expect God to answer us?
Right. I think we expect it.
Well, there's many.
We don't get it.
We're expecting. Sometimes we want him to.
And sometimes, you know, I think sometimes we can be out of the will of God and not know we're out of the will of God. But when we know we're out of the will of God, don't we need to get in the will of God before we pray if we expect to get an answer?
Because it's an unclaimed vessel called a woman. Now, when you get claimed by asking for forgiveness, then you become a clean vessel of God forgiving, then you can hear the will of God. Because, I mean, God looks at the heart, and He knows. Don't know how to come and tell, well, I think he's going on, God knows.
Yeah. And Samuel kind of, with him slipping like he's doing, it's kind of like, he kind of knows he's out of the will of God. Right?
Well, he disguised himself, so he knew that.
Trying to hide from people, who can look through you when you're not doing the will of the Lord, by your daily walk, and how you treat people.
And another thing I'd like to mention too, is we all need to study ask for more discernment, because we can never get too much.
That's right.
So we can discern between the spirits and what people are doing, you know. And in order to do that, you gotta keep seeking for more and more of it.
I think that's exactly right, Sister May. And when Jesus left, he said he wasn't going to leave us comforter. He's going to send the comforter back with us. And if we call on the comforter of the Holy Spirit, you know, for that discernment, he'll give it to us. He'll give us guidance and direction and discernment, so we know. Sister Wendy.
And I think he does answer many times more out, even when we're outside of his will. And I think in my life, when he does answer, sometimes when I've known I was out of his will and sometimes when I haven't, those are some of the hardest answers to deal with, because like you said before, sometimes he gives us what we think we want, to show us that his plan is really ultimately better for us than our plan is for us. And I know those have been some of the hardest times for me, and some of the experiences that I have learned the most in was when he said, okay, if you think this is what's best, then here you go.
Here you go.
Yeah.
I think that's good, Sister Wendy. I think that's right. Sister Tabby.
Getting back to the text, I feel like we even do this in the modern day church, some Catholicism and stuff like that. This is what they're doing. They're praying, some of them, not all of them, to people who are in heaven, who did wonderful things like Samuel did, but instead of going to God who can grant those requests through Jesus, they decide to use another person, a priest or Mary or Peter, to try to get their requests through. And so we can get mad at Saul all we want to for doing this when God didn't answer, but in so many of our churches, this is exactly what we do. We go to the preacher, oh, can you please pray for me so I can get whatever? We go through mother's prayers or somebody else's, when we should really be going to God for ourselves.
And we start repeating, same thing. I think you're absolutely right, Sister Tabby. Will someone read our next verse? Oh, Ricky, go ahead, Ricky, and then we'll read our next verse.
I wasn't in the old scripture a lot, but reading the first page, he was wrong.
Okay. He was wrong, huh?
He was wrong.
Okay.
Because a medium and what he went to is our normal day psychic readers.
Yeah.
And now I understand.
All right. Somebody read our next verse then. I think number 14.
So he said to her, what is his form? And she said, an old man is coming up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed down.
Yeah, so Saul said, what is his form? And she said, an old man is coming up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed down. So Saul is trying to get holy now, isn't he? He's like, I've got reverence for you, Saul. I've got reverence for you, Samuel. he wanted Samuel, and it looks like he's getting Samuel, right?
Well, it's just, I think he thought it was Samuel because, he was just covered in the prophet's robe, that's what the mantle is. So he saw the old man and a prophet coming up, dressed like, well, a man coming up dressed like a prophet. He assumed that was Samuel.
Yeah, because it does say that he, he had the mantle and it was covered with the mantle and everything, so he looked like a prophet. He looked like, I mean, he hadn't seen his face at this point, but the old man, covered with the robe, he perceived that it was Samuel, didn't he? So, Saul he's bowed down to the ground. Someone read the next verse and let's see what's happening now.
Now Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" And Saul answered, "I am deeply distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God has departed from me and does not answer me anymore, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called you, that you may reveal to me what I should do."
Yeah. So is Saul getting what he wanted? Is he getting what he wanted? And he kind of answers his own, his own question, doesn't he? He says that, and God has departed from me. And he said, and does not answer me anymore, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Brother John.
And he wasted his time to call Saul out of the grave. Samuel, excuse me, called Samuel out of the grave. For what? He was a man of God. He had to click with God. He was tight with him.
Yeah.
So does he think he's gonna answer his question? Oh, crazy. So he's bipolar.
It's the only way he can't use Samuel to do what he needs to do there. He's gonna have to get himself fit with God that first, because God is cut him loose because he didn't do right. And now the only thing is make a total turnaround to do right. And God is a person that he needs to call. He calls when he wants to from the grave, but to correct him, God would be the only one to do that.
Yeah. But isn't that what we do sometimes? Isn't that what we do sometimes? He's hoping against hope that Samuel will come from the grave and tell him what he wants to hear. When he said his own self that God has departed from him and hadn't been answering him anymore, so he knows that he just needs to get right and pray, and pray, but he just seems like he don't want to do right.
Sometimes I know it gets way out there, but sometimes we ain't careful. Our loved ones, they did well while they were here, but we can't let them go when we get in the grave. We always making a God out of it, and that's not right. They've gone on to God, and we just can't continue to hang up on them and not care on God's word. He wants us to pick up the pieces and put him first.
But if we go back to when Saul started getting out the will of God, God told him to, the Amalekites or whichever one it was, he told him to kill them all, to kill the babies, to kill the women, to kill the suckling children, to kill all of the sheep, the oxen, the goats, to kill everything. And Saul didn't do that. He went down and he killed him. He took the king and brought the king back as a prisoner, and they saved the fatted sheep and the fatted oxen and all, and so God had told him to kill everything, and he didn't do it. And then he had made the sacrifices when he wasn't supposed to, and so Samuel told him that God was going to rend the kingdom from him. But he could have prayed. He could have asked God to give him another chance. He could have, he could have prayed. He could have asked God for forgiveness, and it's possible God would have, but we don't see anywhere that he did that.
He knew that was what he did when he was both disobedient. He would kill everything. That's what God told him. And he disobeyed. And that's what his hang-up was. Where he made the mistake, he should have went back and got back on ask God to forgive them.
Yeah.
They are totally committed, not just asking by mouth. But Lord, how does that mean what you said and said what you mean?
Yeah. Because Samuel, I think Samuel, killed the king, cut the king up in little pieces, right before him, just to show him that that's what God wanted. I mean, it seems gruesome when you read it, but, he said that's what God wanted, to kill everything. So, anyway, let's read our next verse and see what's happening there.
And Samuel said, so why do you ask me, seeing that the Lord has departed from you, has become your enemy? Or God has become your enemy.
So does that make sense, what Samuel said?
Because you couldn't do that for God unless.
That's plain and simple.
I think that's plain and simple.
I think sometimes what happened, we need to try to get back in line by going through other people when we need to go direct to God.
Yeah.
Because if God has called us and said, you have did wrong, there's one way back, is repent of it. I mean, some other way, I can go around finding as many friends I want and try to go in and fix things for me. I have to go for God for myself.
What he said. What he said. So he went around about, rather than praying to God, he just went to this medium and had the medium conduct a seance. And the medium has conducted the seance, and it seems that God has allowed Samuel to come back.
But Samuel didn't hold his mouth. He spoke and told him what he said, "Done me, why are you coming back as me?"
Yeah, that's plain and simple.
That's
Ain't it?
right.
You can't do nothing.
So why do you ask me, seeing the Lord has departed from you and has become your enemy?
And I look at Sammy, he did not take the place of God here, because we sometimes like to take credit, yeah, I'll get this for you, But Sammy, he didn't do that. Why you one, God had departed from you and you know it. Now you need to go back to him.
So he wanted Samuel, and it seems like he's got Samuel. Someone read the next verse, please.
And the Lord has done for himself as he spoke by me. From the Lord has torn the kingdom about of your hand and giving it to your neighbor David.
So what does that mean when it says, and the Lord has done for himself as he spoke by me? What does that mean?
God did what he said.
And when it says spoke by me, who is that? And the Lord has done for himself as he spoke by me?
God has spoken through Samuel
Yeah.
to tell Saul what his fate was going to be. Evidently Saul would never believe it. And going in and out of his psychosis and everything. So now, bringing up, he went in he did three things. He went in the night, he dressed up, thinking nobody would see him, and he called for a seance. And so he did three things that one night that was out of God's will, as y'all all said. And so he still is looking for hope in this situation.
Yeah.
And God had already told Saul through Samuel what his fate was. And so now this is just kind of bringing it all back to him and all at one time.
Yeah. Yes, I think you're right, Sister Cindy. I think that's what Samuel is telling him. Do you remember when I came to you and told you that God was going to rend the kingdom for you, that he was going to, tear it out of your hands? I mean, I spoke that. God spoke through me to tell you that. You didn't heed it, but he spoke through me to tell you that. And now, I'm telling you again.
I think too, we need to recognize things like that God already said, don't have no other God before me now. If we got off from God, off the line, that we need to go back to him, get back on. You can't run around and hide and disguise yourself and think you're gonna fool God. You need to go direct back to God, you know, just like say, I have sinned, I did wrong.
Yeah.
And you took the kingdom away from it, and now I'm begging for it back.
Yeah.
I mean, be up to God where you get it back.
Yeah, and I think this, you know, I think that's right in line with, you know, the teachings that, you know, Pastor Woods has been, you know, with the debt free and everything, you know. When Saul went down to kill the people and to overtake the city and everything, he just couldn't stand, he just couldn't stand killing those good looking animals.
Yeah.
I mean, he just, you know, he just couldn't stand killing those fatted oxens and the fatted sheep and the fatted goats. Like, oh man, I mean, we can take this back and we can eat for a long time. You know, and he just, you know, he just couldn't bring himself to, you know, to do that. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, I think what pastors try to, you know, teach us is sometimes, you know, we want that big car, you know, we want that big house, and, you know, God may be saying, you know, yeah, but if you get it, you're going to suffer a long time in trying to pay for it because you really can't afford it. And you can get it and you can be looking pretty, but you're going to be out of my will because you can't do the things that you need to. You can't help take care of your family, you can't take care of your mother, you can't help take care of the church. But, you know, sometimes we want it and we get it and we do it and we don't get things lined up. And that's, you know, seems like Saul, he just, you know, he just kept it. I mean, you know, I think Samuel said, when he came back and started talking to, when Samuel came and started talking to Saul, and Saul said, I have utterly destroyed the Amaleks just as God told me to. And Samuel said, well, what's that out here bleeping in the background? Well, you know, he said, we kept these, you know, he tried to justify it. He said, we kept those fatted sheep and stuff so we could sacrifice them to God. And that's kind of what we say sometimes, you know, well, we want to look good for God. And we want to, you know.
Brother, tell it.
That's right. That's right, Deacon. Go ahead, Deacon.
But wouldn't that be kind of like, I said, was it Jesus when this Mary, when it was using this high priced oil, and she was taking it and wiping, and they thought, well, this is too high price to take it and be wiping all the feet or clean him with, and we use that so well for great money. And so like Saul was saying these things, and everything that's on earth belongs to God.
That's right.
And he told him to kill them, he didn't kill them.
He didn't kill him. He decided he's going to do it his own way, kind of.
Right.
Okay, somebody read our next verse. 18.
Because you did not obey the voice of the Lord, don't execute his spirit's wrath upon the obedient woman. Therefore, the Lord has done this thing to you this day. It's just reminded.
Just reminded
And reminded them why he was going through you.
And when did he say it was going to happen? He said this day, didn't he, Sunday? So therefore, the Lord has done this thing to you this day. So that kind of lets us know that it's pretty imminent now, isn't it?
Right. It's a done deal.
Yeah. I think that's it. He wanted Samuel, and it seems that this meeting has brought Samuel back, but it doesn't seem that he got the answer that he wanted. It says there are consequences to disobedience. Do we believe that? You know, sometimes we think we can have our cake and eat it too. You know, we think we can do it without consequences, but sooner or later the consequences catch up with us, don't they? Okay, verse 19. Somebody read verse 19.
Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also deliver the army of Israel into the hand of the Philistines.
So what's this verse saying?
Tomorrow, you and your sons will be with me. At least they're going to heaven.
I don't think they could go through the wrong elevator. one letter of fire. The elevator.
Yeah. We'll have to wait for Pastor to come back and get some insight on this one right here, because, I think Samuel might have went up, but I'm not sure which way Saul and his sons were going.
He's gonna be with me, well, maybe dead.
Dead, yeah, he's been dead, and then, you know, out of this world, he's gonna
He
be.
should be lightning.
Yeah.
That's, you know, we disobey, there's a punishment, and God holds his word, you know, even of all the good work Moses done, he told him you will not be able to go into the promised land.
Yeah,
You'll be able to look over it, and he told him that you won't be able to go over it.
yeah.
And when he says something, you know, everything's in his hand.
It is, It is, and Moses was a mighty, you know, he was a mighty leader. And we know that, you know, that we know that Moses made it in because he was on the Mount of Transfiguration.
That's right.
But like Deacon OJ said, there was consequences for striking the rock. You know, there was a consequence. He didn't get to go over he didn't get to go with the children over into the land of milk and honey.
And so there is a change, you know, of all this right here, of forgiving. That's the thing that we have it, you know, and that's what the cross was all about, not the Son, but Jesus died for us all. So thank God for his grace and mercy.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And even though we make mistakes, you know, because of Jesus, we have an opportunity that we can make those mistakes and still ask for forgiveness, and we still can make it in.
That's true.
We got it, you know, a lot easier than he had in the Old Testament, and Saul just, you know, and Samuel, it seems, you know, when we read and study, Samuel seemed to really love Saul. He really cared for Saul. I mean, even when he came to Saul and told him what the Lord said, he still cared for Saul. And he went, I think, prayed with Saul, but he just couldn't get Saul to do right. He just couldn't get him to do right.
You know, that's why this always will be, I guess, this is a preparation ground. And we have to be careful, I don't even know the sense, how careful are we to live with what we have, because we won't have a chance to go back over and do all our life over as we go through. You know, we need to ask for forgiveness at times. And some people get so stubborn, they won't even ask God for forgiveness.
Got too much pride?
Yeah.
And sometimes our consequences affect, you know, sometimes our consequences affect our whole family.
Yeah.
And that's what, with this verdict right here, it seems like, you know, Saul's consequences affecting his whole family. I mean, not just him wrapped up in it, but, you know, Samuel brought a verdict to say, you and your son.
That's right.
I mean, and that's, you know, so we have to be careful how we live, and not because other people involved other than just us. Sister Wendy and Sister Tabitha.
True, like, I was just listening to a pastor, I guess on the radio, maybe Sunday, coming to church, and he was just reiterating that fact that, you know, no matter who you are and how much of a loner you may think you are, your decisions, no one's decisions ever only affect them. And that's a heavy thought, you know, and especially for those of us who, you know, are involved with our families and our friends, and the ripple effect just is horrendous.
It is, it really is. Yeah, it really is. Sister Tabitha.
And so now we see why God didn't answer him. I mean, would you want to know this about yourself? I would rather just go into battle, die there. But now you're going into battle, knowing what's going to happen. So it backfired in two ways. He really does know what's going to happen now, but I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, so he's got to, you know, he hasn't got to live with it a long time, but he's got to live with this for a little while, hasn't he? Am I missing any hands? This is a bad verdict.
It's just like somebody being on death row and they got a set date that they're supposed to die. I mean, you know, what do you do in those moments of those, well, for some people it's years, but for Saul, what do you do in those moments before? I mean, there's a lot you can do, you can repent, but he's not going to. It's hard, his heart is so hard.
Yeah, and even here, you know, we don't see him repent. We don't see him asking Samuel to pray for him. We don't see him, you know.
He did his last ditch effort when he asked him to sing Sam. That was his last ditch.
Yeah.
You know, that's how the devil works. That's a mighty power if you let him have the power, because you see people make statement, you know, if you're coded here for our forgiving, you know, think about what you're saying, you know, because Jesus didn't say that we should love one another for nothing. It really meant something, you know, because this is the only way we're going to get to heaven, that we love one another, you know.
Yeah.
But these people, boy, I tell you, this, you know, and people being in their own family don't speak to one another for just months and months, you know. It's just, we have a chance. Saul had a chance to make it correct. Somebody took pride.
It's his pride. He just wouldn't. And you know, it's you know, he had off ramps he could have gotten off of a lot of times. I mean, when David cut his collar or whatever. And, I mean, you know, you just think, you know, here's a man done, he doesn't cut part of your cloak off, and he hollered from your old cross and hold it up and show you, say, see, I could have, I was close enough, I could have killed you, and I could have took you out, and you know that he couldn't have, and you just changed for a few minutes, just for a day or two, and then you go back to your old way, and you know that he could have took your life if he wanted to.
Right.
And then you turn around and try to kill him again. It's, you know, like Brother John might be onto something when he says that, you know, about that bipolar, because that's heavy. You almost say, thank you for sparing my life, and okay, you know, this is what God wants, you know, we'll do it. But he couldn't bring himself, like the OJ said, that pride.
That pride, yeah. And sometimes we careful, we get hung up out here, you know, and we get stirred up real bad, and then we run into church, and we have to be prayed for and get forgiven, you know. Or the funeral come, I'm gonna do better, you know, my people died, and all of a sudden some of that wear off a little bit, you go right back to some trade. And that's bad, and that's exactly what Saul did, because Saul, I'm told, they were a strong man, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
But that didn't last long at all.
It didn't last long. It didn't last long at all. Okay, somebody read our next verse.
Immediately Saul fell full length on the ground and was dreadfully afraid because of the words of Saul. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no food all day or all night.
Scared again.
Yeah, so what do we think about
Scared
this?
to eat.
Made him think.
So what do we think about this?
This is good drama.
You know, Samuel was a mighty man of God, and you know, him bringing a verdict like that, I think that would make you lose your strength. I mean, that would kind of make you lose your strength. Yeah, it said that Saul was dreadfully afraid, and there was no strength in him. He fell full length on the ground. He said, "What have I done?"
But you know, sometimes, you know, when we wrong and come up deep down, you know what you're doing. And you know about taking the road to get it fixed right. That doesn't mean you're not gonna have to suffer, so you have to pay for what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're sin now. It's like who's that Jeremiah told you, you're gonna sin now, you're gonna be going to captivity for 70 years, so you know I was planting some garden for them. And you're gonna be down for a while.
Be down there for a while.
And so Saul know that he disobeyed God, and that's a penalty. So he fell on his face, but it was still there for him to try to get it right with God.
And the commentary above that says, a leader can lead a country into captivity. Do we believe that?
Yes.
Now, I think I heard Deacon Lenny say, you know, sometimes when you got a, you know, when you got a, you know, an ungodly leader, you know, people really suffer.
That's right.
You know, Savannah?
Just looking at it, it just shows, even though he wanted to hear from God, or he wanted God to talk to him so bad that he went and saw somebody he wasn't supposed to see in the first place, you never really see a reverence for God in all of this. There's never any, Lord, whatever you want to tell me, just tell me. Even when he fell down on his face when he heard Samuel come up and he knew Samuel was there, he fell on his face, but it wasn't out of reverence for who Samuel was or what Samuel was about. I mean, again in verse 20 it says he fell full length on the ground, and it wasn't laying prostrate before the Lord to pray. he was dreadfully afraid.
Yeah.
And so all this time he's been wanting to know this answer, but he's been afraid. So he's never really approached God with a confidence that, God, you can do whatever you want to do, and I serve you. So just give me an answer so I know how to prepare myself.
Yeah.
It's always been out of fear.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Savannah. I think, that's a very good point. Even now, it's not, he's not falling down in reverence to God. He's falling down because he's afraid. He's falling down because he didn't get the answer that he wanted. He's falling down because he knows what's gonna happen. That's it.
And it is the Passover.
You just have something this way. Go ahead, Duke.
And I look at, that's one thing, David made a lot of mistakes, but David would come back and confess of his sins.
Yeah.
And, one time he said, wash me with hyssop. I guess that's right.
Yeah.
Hyssop, that I may get cleansed, something that would really cleanse him, because that was that's why I believe that he was such a man chosen from God's own heart, that he was humble. I mean, though he did wrong, but he would come back and confess of his wrong.
Yeah.
With Saul, he went around disguising, trying to use other people to get him back in when he needed to go direct to God. And they said, I have sinned, sincerely, I have sinned.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reverence in it at all.
Yeah, and from what we know about David, I mean, if David had got a verdict like this, I mean, seems like David would have repented and said, Lord, if it's your will that I should die, then I'm ready. I mean, he's had some pretty amazing prayers in the Bible. When you read in the Psalms and stuff, David had some pretty amazing prayers.
Because when Nathan told me, when he told me about the situation with Bathsheba, David, he said, when I'll be killed when Nathan said, well, thou art the man.
That's what he said.
David, he made ready to get forgiven.
Yeah, he did.
And that's what we always have to do, because somewhere we just have to meet God face to face, in the spirit. And say, I just have done wrong, because you just can't hide yourself from the world. When you've been singing, I tell people looking at you every day. It's all this sin, and they see it on, and you doing wrong. And that's why I said about leadership is a good thing, but you have to be very careful how you lead and how you treat people.
Yeah.
Because all this will come back to your face.
Yeah, and Saul was leader. He was king for a long time, and he did it his way for a long time. But, as we read and study, it shows that sooner or later, the consequences catch up with us for our actions. Leading an ungodly life, we can escape and get by for a little while, but sooner or later it catch up with us, Brother John.
His problem was, he never had the closeness of people. He was always like, whatever he says goes. He was king, and the buck stops here. And at the one time, all this was happening around him. He couldn't get David. I mean, that would have opened up my mind and said, I'm going to leave David alone and finally seek God. Or something, asking for forgiveness. But he don't. That's what happens when people in big hierarchies, they sit out there, they don't ask God for nothing. They think they can do it all by themselves. David was almost started in that same route, but David knew where to go. It's just like my dad used to say, you gotta ask forgiveness even if you spit on the ground. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I've always seen about people that are up there in the top. It's just like when, I don't want to talk politics, when Obama first sat up there and became president of this country, I was so happy, finally. 98% of the black people voted for him in this nation. 98% of the votes went to him. And I said to myself, he's going to tackle a lot of things. But then when he started passing laws, the skate thing and this abortion thing and all this stuff, I said, wow, I thought God was in it. But he's just like him. He's exactly just like him. He thought he was president, so I could do what I want to do. Okay, I'm going to send John back to the army. You know what I'm saying? But it's sad. It's sad, but that's where they are.
You can't serve God and man, can you?
You can't.
There was a saying about,
on Sunday. run ahead of God, really, so
Yeah.
what his text, run ahead of God?
Yeah.
Run ahead of God,
Yeah.
that's what happened to some of these.
Try to run ahead of God.
Run ahead, God.
As the older people used to say, you got to remember this, the chickens will come. To the roost. It's wait in the afternoon, they all come to the roost.
Sooner or later, they come home to roost.
Sooner or later, they just walk, but here they come.
Did you have your hand up while ago, Reverend Lewis? Did you have your hand up while ago? Sooner or later, the chickens will come home to roost.
Yes, they will.
Okay, somebody read verse 21.
And the woman came to Saul and saw that he was severely troubled, and said to him, Look, your maidservant has obeyed your voice, and I have put my life in my hands and heeded the words which you spoke to me.
So what's happening there?
I did what you told me to do. What's the problem?
Lord,
What's the problem?
And she let it know, she said, I put my life in, my hands, so, I've done my part, just because you got a bad verdict,
It ain't me.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to do with it, I did what you wanted me to do, and we got Samuel back, and the fact that he said, tomorrow's gonna be your last day on this earth, that ought not have any consequences on my life, I did what I told you I'd do, and so.
And it's too late.
You know, there was one seance, so one lady, he tried to kill those rest of them. How did he know she was there?
Well, he sent
People out
yeah, he sent his spies and people out to find him.
Sent his devil.
And I think in, last week's lesson, I think Pastor was saying kind of like the drug houses and stuff like that. Even though they're illegal, there's some people who know where they're at. And so even though these mediums were kind of illegal, there was some still scattered around because there was money in it. They people paid them for that. So, they're making money and everything. So,
I know that, you're right.
and the woman came to Saul and saw that he was severely troubled, and said to him, Look, your maidservant has obeyed your voice, and I have put my life in my hands and heeded the words which you spoke to me. And you said, that by the Lord that I wouldn't be harmed. You got bad verdict, but I did my part.
I think about what so much has been said here every day since the beginning of these 48, going 49 years. To make the statement, said, well, I don't want no trouble when I come to the river. I want to be able to cross over. Well, Saul really kept his trouble.
He run headlong.
Lord, mercy, he really kept it. He just laid the slap him in the face here. I mean, he brought it all on himself, though. Disobedient.
He brought it all on himself, and it seems like, God has, come down to, enough of this.
Yes.
Enough of this, and it seems that God gave him every opportunity.
Yes.
Every opportunity to repent and change course, and he just didn't do it. He just didn't do it. He was just determined to do things in his own way, and he did. So we thank everyone for your input tonight. Any last comments or questions? If not, we're going to turn it back in the hands of Deacon O.J. So we'll close out. Thank everyone.
We sure enough like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. And, I know you're going somewhere else. You're here, and we thank you for that. And don't forget, tomorrow, Lucas, tomorrow, and then